Even though this channel is relatively small, about 4,500 subscribers, we have plenty of watch time. In the last 28 days, we have 632 hours of watch time, but we barely get any comments. And I'm kind of wondering why that is. I wonder if it's because people are ashamed that they didn't know this stuff. In fact, I get emails once in a while with like, man, I wish I learned this sooner. But don't worry, I don't know anybody who actually knows this in real life. That's why I have to post on the internet. It's kind of like me posting a video is like it's kind of like fishing. I'm so hoping that somebody takes the bait and then learns it. And so if you actually watch these videos and you actually learn what I'm going to talk about here about debt payoff, congratulations, you're like one in a million. I even try to teach this to my friends and family and no luck. So far had no luck. I think I have like 5 members in my family, in my extended family who are like doctors. I sent an email to my doctor cousin, no response, crickets. So, don't feel ashamed that you didn't know this because if I knew you in real life, you'd probably I don't know if you'd actually pay attention to me because I know that talking to people about their finances is really taboo, and most people would rather email a stranger their finances than anybody they know in real life. And I think one of the reasons why is because they feel like the people who know them in real life will have ammunition against them about, if they screw up, well, that's on you, right? And don't worry, I know that feeling. Right? But anyways, you don't have to be ashamed. It's just normal to not know about finances. In fact, if you ever watch Caleb Hammer, that's all his guests are is just people who are clueless. Some of them who make really, really good money too. All right, so let's go ahead and get started and pay off debt using something we call the velocity method. Um, and so, what's the first step to paying off debt? Well, it's really easy. You list your income, expenses, leftover checking savings, $321.36. In fact, I actually got an email a couple days ago. Again, random stranger sent me this email with this budget, and it was kind of very similar to this, no, though not exact, right? And expense breakdown, we list all the debts that we have, and here for personal expenses, it's about $2,000 a month. Okay. So what we do is after we list all of our debts, we put in as a line item just an average of all the general figure for your expenses, because what we're trying to figure is what would your life be like when you're debt free, right? So right now things seem a little bit tight because you have a lot of debt. But if we were to be debt free, let's say all the debt, credit cards, auto loan, mortgage goes to zero, would you be in a much better position? $3,800. And if the answer is yes, then this strategy might help you because it's designed for debt payoff, cash flow management, debt payoff. Whereas a scenario where I imagine it wouldn't help you is even if you were debt free, you were still negative, right? So that's something that um, we should talk about or consider when we're creating the budget and whether this strategy would help you or not. And a lot of people don't really understand. I've noticed when I watch like TikToks and stuff, they don't differentiate debt versus non-debt, right? You have to differentiate that. And if you've ever studied real estate investing, they always talk about NOI versus cash flow. NOI is your income minus expenses, and it doesn't consider debt at all. Whereas cash flow takes into consideration your debt. Income minus expenses minus debt is your cash flow, right? So what we're going to do with this velocity method is assume that we have the same income and the same expenses, and we're going to do something completely crazy that you were taught as a kid was not the right thing to do. Okay. And what is that thing? Well, it's basically not save money. I know. Right. So this is going to be a big fat zero. And we're going to consider our cash flow to be separate from our checking and savings. So you see this average American banking column right here, where the checking and savings is kind of our cash flow, right? Because if you ever study real estate investing, it's just whatever's left over in your checking account. Income minus expenses minus debt service. Whatever's left over your checking account is your cash flow. Whereas here, we don't really care about what's in our checking account. When money comes into our checking account, you know where it goes? Into a line of credit. And what's a line of credit? It's basically a financial tool where you could borrow money, pay it back, and then use it over and over again, right? That's what a line of credit is. So a credit card is technically a line of credit, but we're not going to use that because a credit card is somewhat not flexible. If I put my entire $5,800 into one credit card, I can't pay the other credit card, so I'm screwed, right? Whereas if I put my entire paycheck into a personal or home equity line of credit, I could immediately pull that money out because that's just the nature of the tool. The personal or home equity line of credit is the only financial tool that the bank provides, as far as I'm aware, where you can immediately put money in to pay the debt and then take it right out, like, I don't know, a millisecond after, right? And that's why we're going to use a personal home equity line of credit. Now we're going to assume we have a $35,000 8% home equity line of credit, but okay, here's the elephant in the room. Here's the what we have to consider, the caveat. If you only have $321 left over and you go to the bank, will the bank lend you a free and clear line of credit? The answer to that is no. Why is that? It's because banks don't lend money to people who need it. Yeah, I say this a million times, and sometimes I even have people emailing me like, "How do I get a line of credit?" And I'm not trying to be a dick or anything. I'm just saying that you have to do things in the right order of operations. And so sometimes when I try to sell you an educational program or whatever to learn it right, sometimes you all wait till the last minute where it's too late for me to help you, right? So that's why I keep telling you, education, banks don't lend money to people who need it. People who pay attention, right? Like, it's really weird. It's like when people scam you, um people are they kind of get willingly ripped off by people who scammed them. I mean, think about college, right? College just takes your money and then, like, doesn't really give you anything in return. But when the person who's actually trying to help you asks for money, like, people act like that person's a scam. I don't know why it works that way, but that's just how it is, right? Anyways, back to my point. Banks don't lend money to people who need it. And the reason why the bank doesn't lend money to people who need it is that people who need money don't pay you back. I know it sounds harsh, right? That's why when you go to a bank and you need money, they won't lend it to you. They're only looking for a small percentage of borrowers who they consider to be low risk, right? And then if they're doing things like offering credit cards, that's the reason why credit cards have such high interest rates with 20 to 30%, because they're unsecured, and if you default, there's nothing to take, right? But then the high interest rates offset the risk that the bank has to take when lending to people who have credit cards. So why am I showing a free and clear line of credit that the bank is most likely not willing to lend in this situation? Is because it's actually easier to understand the concept of if you had a free and clear. I'm sorry, I can't even speak today. If you had a free and clear line of credit, it's actually much easier to understand the concept, even though it's unrealistic. If I show you a realistic concept, your mind will blow up, or it will be blown because what happens is that the situation gets a lot more complicated and it's hard to understand. But anyways, all right, let's just do this. I'll make it easy for you to understand, right? So what we're going to do is move some debts into a line of credit, and the way that we do that is we categorize them using something called a cash flow index. So what's the cash flow index? It's just basically the balance of the debt divided by the monthly payment, and then we do that for all of our debts, and this gives us a ranking system. And the lower the number, that's the one we want to pay off first. And then this big number, we want to pay off last. So why is that? It's because in order to get rid of this 30-year mortgage, I literally have to give someone $265,000 just for this itty bitty amount of cash flow, right? Whereas I could pay off these credit cards, okay, and I'm going to get a relatively higher proportion of cash flow based on how much I'm paying, okay? So that's why we pay off the mortgage last. The mortgage is a big debt, small payment, whereas the credit cards, small debt, relatively small debt, bigger payment, right? Okay, so now what we do is we're going to move some debts into the line of credit. So 5, 8, 15, and I'm going to go ahead and sum it up. And so that's $28,000 of credit card debt. So let's move it into the line of credit. And then we just did a simple balance transfer. And so what happens here? Well, these 3 credit cards simply just go to zero. And then now this $321.36, right, has somehow turned into $1,243.86 without making more money, right? Like, wouldn't you want a free and clear line of credit so that you could get get provided immediate relief with your cash flow and multiply it by 4? But unfortunately, that's not going to happen because the bank doesn't lend money to people who need it, right? All right, so now what's the final step? Well, you put your entire paycheck into the line of credit, take your expenses out, and then rinse and repeat over and over again. So after about 28 months, we should see that line of credit balance go down. But yeah, because it's going to go down about $1,200 every single month. So let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to take the previous month's balance, previous month's interest minus our cash flow. So it's 1,243.86. And then what we're going to do is take the average daily balance, right? Multiply it by the interest rate and then divide by 12. That's how you get the interest for that month for the line of credit. And then let's see how long it takes us to pay off the line of credit. Okay, it's probably 28 months, but let's see. All right. Ooh, 25 months. Okay, better than I thought. All right, so now we'll do this. So 25 months, we paid off these 3 credit cards. Okay, and how much was that again? That is $28K. All right. And then as the auto loan, student loan, and the mortgage, so we just kind of do this, put month 25, right? So we have all of these here. And I know what some of you are thinking, right? So some of you are probably thinking, why don't we focus on the 7% loan? Oh, do we have a $46,000 auto loan? Holy crap. This person must have been high just to buy a 46,000 auto loan with only, this amount of income. No wonder the figures look kind of wonky. But anyways, let's keep going anyways. All right. So why are we going to pay off this 3% loan? Okay. Well, because it provides the most amount of cash flow. So you see this 27 grand for $826 compared to the 33 grand for less than that. So even though the interest rate is the highest, well, let's tackle this one first, and then we'll tackle the student loan afterwards, right? So we're not focusing on the interest rate. Remember the cash flow index, the bang for your buck. And then let's go ahead and move it. And I'm going to go ahead and do this and copy and paste. So this is going to be plus 27666.97. And then what's our cash flow now? Well, it will have increased by an $800 amount. And then wablam! Now it's $2,000. Well, blam, alakazam. All right. So now we got that. And now I'm going to copy and paste this. So now this is going to be 2070.42. Bam, 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 bam. So let's see how long it takes us to pay off that auto loan. 39 months. Okay. So now it's going to be right here. And I'm going to do this. So it's going to be 39 months. And then this is going to be, what is it, 28K? So 28 plus 46. All right, so that's going to be 74K, right? 74K. And then now we have the student loan and the mortgage. So at 39 once it's the balance of the student loan. Okay. All right. So now, again, same thing. Now the student loan has a very similar interest rate to the line of credit, so I feel comfortable moving it. However, with a 30-year mortgage, you got to be careful about moving it into the line of credit. And I'm going to explain a little bit later why, right? So there is a point where interest rate does matter. And then there is a point where interest rate does not matter with loans. But the longer the term of the loan and the lower the interest rate, yeah, you really got to care about that interest rate, okay? But let's just move this student loan into the line of credit. And I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste. So this is going to be plus 299112.34. Okay, and then we're going to do this. So this is going to be $464. And then this is going to be $2,500 of cash flow. All right. All right, so now let's go ahead and copy. Whoopsie, what happened here? So $2,500 of cash flow, right? And then that's going to be minus 2534.85, right? And then I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste, and we'll see when it gets paid off. And then bam, alakazam, 51 months. All right, so 51 months, it gets paid off. And you know how I'm so good at this is because I I followed the Bruce Lee rule of doing one thing 10,000 times. It's almost kind of like that rule, what was it called? Oh, I can't even think. What was it, that Malcolm Gladwell rule, 10,000 hours till you become a master? I have over 700 videos on this channel about the topic. We're probably going to reach 800 soon. So that's why I can go through this really quickly. And what time, what's the time limit that we're at? 15-minute mark. Okay. All right. So 265,051 months. All right. And then we see that we have a $243,000 balance, right? $243,000 balance. And so now you take a look at this, okay? And you have two options, right? So here's the thing I'm going to show you, that you don't want to move an entire 30-year mortgage into a line of credit. Biggest mistake you can make, right? Biggest mistake. And I'll show you why a little bit later. But just as a general rule of thumb, what we can do is put this $2,500 into the mortgage as an extra payment, right? So monthly payment, extra payment, and you can easily pay off the loan that way. But what's the likelihood someone's going to do that? Almost zero. This is the default option people know they can do. And why don't they do that? It's the same reason why most people never overpay credit cards, right? Because when you overpay a loan, there's an element of friction that makes it hard to manage your money, right? So that's why most people never overpay loans, right? And that's why people don't even overpay credit cards, because if like I said before in the very beginning, when I dump my entire paycheck into that credit card, I can't pay other credit cards with credit card one, with the first credit card that I overpaid, right? I can't pay any of my debts. It's really hard. That's why we don't overpay credit cards. But the reason why we like using lines of credit is because we can overpay it, and that causes no issue with our cash flow. Now, given that this is the very last debt, okay, very last debt, we can still do it with the line of credit, right? So all we have to do is just take a small amount. We'll just say like $5,000 or $6,000, move it into the line of credit. Okay, so we'll just do right here, plus 6000, right? And then we see that every 2 months or so, right, this gets paid off, 1 to 2 months, and then we just rinse and repeat over and over again. Okay, so that's essentially what we call a sweep or a chunk, right? We just move a piece of loan into the line of credit, which is completely different from replacing your mortgage with the line of credit, right? Two completely different things. Now, I'll tell you why it's actually easier, in my opinion, to do it this way, is because all you have to think about is just putting your entire paycheck into that line and making sure that your line of credit goes to zero and your checking account goes to zero over and over again. Whereas when you're doing extra payments, because there's an element of friction contained when doing extra payments, just even a little bit, right? That causes more complexity, and people who are confused, a confused mind essentially does nothing, right? So that's why this is an alternative to extra payments. Doesn't mean extra payments doesn't work. In fact, extra payments could be cheaper. Just like going to the gym in New Year's is actually the cheapest option, right? It's actually the cheapest option. And you know what? If you were my friend that I cared about and you asked me, hey, I want to get healthier and I'm thinking of going to the gym in January because it's actually the cheapest, and I actually loved you, I would do everything I can to prevent you from going to the gym in January. Because when a person says they're going to go to the gym in January or after New Year's, that's the same thing as saying, I'm never going to do it. But people do that because they think they want to save money. But what's the point of saving money for something that you're never going to do, right? So let me just show you this calculator right here. All right, so let me just put in the details. So what's the income right now? It's 5,800. And then what's our living expenses? It is everything except for the loan we're trying to pay off. So we're trying to pay off this loan. So it'd be this $2,000 mark. Okay. And then what's the payment amount? Let's just go back here. It's 1265.15, 1265.15. And what was the original balance? It was 265. Whoopsie. 265,000, and then the current balance is 243,812.6. 243,812.6. Okay, so how much do we move into the line of credit? We'll just do $6,000. Okay. And it'll take us 6.1 years. All right. So let me just show you something. If you move in the loan into the line of credit in small pieces, completely different effect than moving the whole loan into the line of credit, right? So if I replace this whole loan with the line of credit, look at 6.1 years, 32 grand, bam, it now turns to 78 grand. Okay. Now here's the crazier part, right? So you see how it's an 8% line of credit, right? 8%. What if I change this to 30? You'll end up paying less with the 30% line of credit when you do small sweeps than replacing your entire mortgage with the 8% line of credit, right? So don't don't be I would say don't okay, what's the best way to say this? Don't be so focused just on the interest rate, right? There's a holistic element to all of this, but most people act like the interest rate is the only thing that's important when it comes to debt payoff, right? And even if so let me just show you this. If this is 8%, right? We paid 32 grand of interest and somehow we're able to get a 1% line of credit. You see how it barely makes a difference, the 1 and the 8? So, if you increase it, yeah, it kind of makes a difference. And if you decrease it, it kind of makes a difference. But, don't get too focused on this interest rate, right? Understand the usefulness of the tool because it is the only tool out there that the bank provides where if you dump all your money in, you can get it immediately out, right? No other tool the bank has, including credit cards, which is technically a line of credit, allows you to do that. Okay. Right. So 6.1 years. So let's go ahead. And is that the same? Yeah, let me go back here. So 8. So yeah, 6.1 years. So it's gonna be 0, and then it's gonna be 51 and 12 plus 6.1. And that's 10.35 years, and then we are debt free. Okay. We are debt free. All right. Well, that's it for today, folks. Freelance internship, debt free, $3,800 of cash flow. All right. And so just another video. And here's the thing. I know you're all watching, right? So don't be ashamed that you didn't know this and don't be afraid to comment because I'm watching you. I even know, okay? If I look on the YouTube mobile app, who my most dedicated fans are. YouTube literally has a list. These are your most dedicated fans who are watching the channel. So even if you're not commenting, I know who you are. All right, well, that's it for today, folks. Have a great day, and I'll see you on the next video.